The history of unconventional resource development in the United States involves countless untold failures that have led to huge technological advances, innovative approaches, and numerous partnerships across the industry. To better understand the story behind the oil and gas revolution, it's important to know the players and the science behind the world's most successful energy developments. This video will briefly explore the geology of shale and the advancements made in hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling.
If we look at the unconventionals, we have shale oil, we have shale gas, we have tight gas sandstones, and we have coal bed methane are the four main unconventional reservoirs. The highly matured areas is where you have the dry gas, and the lower level of maturity is where you have more of the liquids. So it's just basically a function of how long this material has been there and how hot it's been and how it's matured over the years. And what we have to do as scientists is get out there and understand the rock and understand what we're doing when we stimulate that rock and what is the optimum situation in terms of the wells, the completion, the stimulation, everything. And so there's a lot of science to be done in all this as we deal with all these different unconventionals.
In the early 1990s, when Mitchell Energy first started in the Barnett Shale, it assumed the best recovery efficiency the company could expect was no more than 16 to 20% of the reserves in place. By instituting hydraulic fracturing in conjunction with horizontal drilling, Mitchell Energy laid the foundation for the shale revolution. Today, with these game-changing technologies, there are companies that believe they can recover somewhere between 40 and 60% of the reserves in place where they are located. But just 20 years ago, geologists and petroleum engineers could have never imagined these numbers because the technology hadn't evolved. Now these advancements happen almost daily in an effort to increase recovery efficiencies, enhance current drilling practices, in addition to finding new exploration techniques that help reduce the impact done to the environment as companies survey new areas for development.
To give the Bakken example, it was drilled and discovered in Old Man Bakken's farm in 1952. So the Bakken was discovered 60 years ago, but it just sat there, with a little bit of horizontal, vertical activity in places, but it only grew to past 2 OPEC nations because of the combination of hydraulic fracturing and being able to drill long horizontal laterals within the zone and individually fracture segments of that thing. So great technology story.
With the horizontals, we can use a surface pad of 5 to 10 acres, and we can almost completely develop maybe 1 or 2 sections of land by drilling as many as 12 horizontals from that 5 to 10 acres. In the old days, when we were drilling vertical wells, you might require 20 to 30 wells in that 2 sections to develop it, and each one would be vertical, and each one would tie up about 3 acres. So from a footprint standpoint, because of these tight formations and because of what we're doing with horizontals and the induced fracs, we are having a far less effect on the surface than we used to.
Over the last decade, the industry continues to embrace horizontal drilling and multi-stage fracturing. Despite the decline in the number of well pad sites and the industry's decreased environmental footprint, groups across America continue to greet the oil and gas community with intense opposition.
Fracturing started in 1949. There's been a little more than 2 million hydraulic fracture treatments pumped. Only a few tens of thousands of them have actually been mapped. But the track record, the environmental record, can we think of an industrial process that's happened 2 million times and we don't have one example of it touching mobile groundwater?
There's a tremendous amount of variability. There are water fracs, there are gel fracs, there are nitrogen foam fracs, there's CO2 foam fracs, there's pumping just nitrogen or just CO2, there's people pumping propane, there's just a whole range of things. And that's just because all these reservoirs are different. The geology is different, their sensitivity to water is different, what you can actually activate in terms of stimulating the natural fractures, that's different in all these reservoirs. Containment, breaking out a zone, that's going to be different, and you're going to treat all those wells differently. Where you land the well is very important. There's so many factors that come into play because the geology is different that we have just a huge arsenal of tools that we use to try and develop these reservoirs.
And then people say, well, why do we hear about it now and not then? And my short answer is fracturing 10 years ago at the start of the shale revolution was a big industry, $4 billion a year industry, 10 years ago. Today it's a $40 billion industry. So if a big industry grows tenfold in a decade, that's game changing and that draws a lot of attention.
The industry's primary game-changing technology has been realized through hydraulic fracturing. While the technology has been hotly debated, it has allowed producers to significantly cut operating costs and has led to increased production and positive steps towards energy independence in the United States.
With the shale revolution, we could produce from rocks we couldn't produce from before. So Pennsylvania, for example, probably greatest shale gas reservoir in the world and is literally changing world energy markets. It's in rural Pennsylvania. The oil industry started there, but it started there 150 years ago. Hasn't been there very much. So it's going into new areas and it's in larger scale and larger scope.
I think North America will remain a leader in these unconventional fuels, even though they're very widespread around the globe. Mostly because this is where you have the competitive environment which made the development of these technologies possible. This is a region where everybody who wants to can invest, lots of people did, attracted by the difference between prices and resources, try to invent things to bridge that difference, make a profit from it. Many of them lost their shirt in the process, a few of them won, generated these resources which we now have. And honestly, the big guys, the BPs, Exxons of this world only came in at a later stage to buy it. As long as this opportunity is here and not in Venezuela or China or Saudi Arabia, innovation will come from here and not from these other provinces.
The modern oil and gas industry has experienced catalyzing breakthroughs that have forever changed resource development. As the industry continues to move forward, for every success it garners, it will also risk failure.
We all have to have failures to learn. Failures are important.